This week in 2000, Eric Lindros played his final game as a Philadelphia Flyer. After sitting out for a month and a half due to injury, Lindros returned for Game 6 of the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals, scoring the lone goal in a 2-1 loss. Lindros would go on to finish his career with 659 points as a Flyer in 8 years, which ranks 6th all-time for the Black and Orange.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I'm your host Josh Abrams. Today we're going to be discussing the Sixers as their season chugs along, as well as the Flyers as they make a push for the playoffs. But before we get into all of that, we must update all of you guys back at home with what's going on in the world. We're Sports Talk Philadelphia. We mainly talk about Philly sports, but what's going on on Earth right now is just affecting everything. The Sixers, the Flyers, and the Phillies have all decided as organizations, as well as with their parent organizations, the MLB, NHL, NBA, all of the major sports organizations have decided to temporarily suspend their seasons until the coronavirus outbreak is at least contained. And it's just going to be very tough to decipher all of this information, mainly because nobody has any idea how to properly handle this. And I don't think a lot of people have an idea of how to properly react to it. So it's just going to be very, very tough for the next couple of weeks in terms of trying to analyze just anything, really. But in terms of the sports world, let's talk about the Sixers. Here with me today is Tyler Small and Gia Lancey. Thank you so much, guys. The Sixers they're chugging along now. Joel Embiid made his return last night, which was good to see. But up until last night, we didn't have Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons, and we're not going to have Ben Simmons for a while. So I guess, where we stand today, third in the division, we still haven't gotten to 40 wins yet. How are we feeling about the Sixers right now?
A lot of it depends on Ben Simmons, like you said. A lot of players have stepped up. Like I really want to give it up to Shake Milton because leading into that Clippers game where he dropped 39 and went off, I thought his career stat line was unbelievable. So 33 career G League games leading into that. And then he had 48 NBA. So nearly half and half throughout his 2 seasons. And even though he averaged 6.2 points per game, when he filled in for Ben Simmons and became that definite starter, he dropped 39, 19, 20, 7, 17, and 15 points after the All-Star break. So I thought he's been a huge step, but he's no Ben Simmons. So we're going to have to see what he comes back with. A back injury is tough for an explosive player like himself. All the best for him, and hopefully he can come back with this gap.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard just because, I feel like it's been the same thing every week, and, they've looked pretty much the same since we've had the last show, and, I feel like everybody's getting, the usual amount of points that they usually get. Mm-hmm. Joel Embiid looked pretty much the same when he came back, so I think it's just they're coasting as of right now.
Yeah, I think a big reason why Embiid had such a desirable return last night was because of the way that the Pistons are structured now. Yeah. Andre Drummond was never better than Embiid. Embiid always outperformed Drummond whenever the Sixers and Pistons would play each other. But now that Drummond's out of Detroit, it's the young Christian Wood starting in place for him. And he had a solid outing last night. He only missed 5 shots, but ultimately the winning team obviously had the better box score, but Embiid ultimately outplayed Wood. He had around 30 points, 14 boards. And the thing with Embiid is that when he's scoring 34 points or whatever, if he's scoring in the 30s on just 15 to 20 shots, that's really where the Sixers are going to excel because he can't, obviously you want him to score on an efficient rate, and he did that last night.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right. Embiid coming back huge. And another thing you got to point out is also, he dominated Drummond so much that when Drummond was there, he needed Blake Griffin's help. So Griffin being, it was almost like a tag team, and both of them aren't here, obviously. So the Pistons are a depleted team, but Embiid, when he had his rookie season, a couple years coming after injury, obviously, he was one of the most efficient players in the league. And it was great to see his shot come back to fruition because of a shoulder injury. That's always scary for getting your jump shot back and getting any move in the post back. But just having him go back to that efficient way, your center should always be your most efficient player, obviously. And he's shooting at above a 50% clip. But just really getting consistent points and quick points in the paint is how you become a successful basketball team nowadays.
Yeah, I think that it's like a pattern for him to obviously play games, be his usual self, then either get hurt or be sick or be lazy and just not want to play.
Right.
So, I mean, I really wish that he was just a more consistent player. I mean, more consistent as when he plays.
Sure.
Obviously, he's consistent when he plays, but you know what I mean. And I think that if him and Ben both consistently played, which they did not this year or last year, I think that this would be a totally different team. So.
Yeah, and it's a lot to ask for, unfortunately, because you obviously want your team to be fully healthy. It's just a shame that injuries are a part of sports so commonly that it eventually finds its way to Philly.
But it's a different thing when you don't take care of yourself either.
True.
Like, I know we talked about this a lot with Joel Embiid last year. Like, he really doesn't take care of himself. Like, he eats burgers on the daily.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, injury that just happened, yeah, but injury that there's ways to prevent it, that's an issue for me.
Yeah, and like, Embiid's known for these soft tissue kind of injuries. Obviously,
Absolutely.
one of them was it was the play with Kevin Love, obviously, that got his shoulder injured. So that you can't really blame that on that. But at the same time, it's a big consistency for him. And we considered this last year going into the offseason. If they're going to ride with this guy for his whole career, if they want Embiid to be a lifer and give him that supermax contract, they really need to discuss his diet with him. So I 100% agree to you.
Yeah, and they say in sports, availability is the best ability.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've gotten to the point now where we, as a fan base, are at almost like a political divide between whether or not we want to keep Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons. I don't think the organization is having that issue. I think right now they're focused on keeping both of them because of their cornerstone franchise players. It's just that one of them has really a lack of effort, energy, and staying healthy problem, while the other one just can't really figure out how to get over the hump of shooting a basketball.
But the reason, of course. But the reason at the same time is because they haven't been able to play together as well as they really could.
Yeah.
Everyone thought they both just kind of clashed. They both clogged the paint together. They need to learn to play together, or their election years are going to come up. Like you say, politically, their election years are going to come up when free agency hits.
Yeah, it's a kind of scary to think about.
Yeah.
But what's not scary anymore is that the Sixers finally picked up a road win last night. It had been, what did I put on there? 45 days.
Yeah.
45 days since we won a road game. You look at the standings, you look at the splits that you can filter the searches by. The Sixers are a top. You look at their home record, best team in the league. 30, and they've only lost 2 games at home. You would think that they're the best team in basketball.
Nope.
They have a road record that's comparable with the New York Knicks.
They just on that road trip. Good for them, I would say. They broke the 1987 Pacers record of home to road win-loss differentials. So good for them. Worst
love
team.
that.
Wow.
Worst home to road team in NBA history so far.
Well, so in that game, we obviously didn't have Embiid, but somebody who stepped up for us was Tobias Harris. You don't want to value a game like that too much because it's the Kings. They're not going to make the playoffs. But is that encouraging to you guys at all that Tobias stepped up and essentially earned his money? And it's not that he's been doing that all the time, but what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times, like last episode, we were talking about how like they kind of compare to like the Nick Foles Super Bowl season and like how we need people to start stepping up. So I think it doesn't matter the game. I think that he needs to show his worth, and if that was the game to do it, that's fine. But I think that it needs to continue on, and it can't just be a game against the Sacramento Kings that aren't going to make the playoffs. So.
I have to disagree, though, because just kind of going with the Sacramento Kings really quick, I know it's not Sacramento talk, it's Philly talk, but the Kings, ever since they've made the decision to put Buddy Hield on the bench, have been one of the hottest teams in basketball, and they are now currently sitting at the 9 or 10 seed for getting into the playoffs. So I would not put this past like as an easy game as like the Pistons was, for example. Okay. Plus, again, a road win, huge for this team.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
I mean, in this month, Harris averaging 22 and 7 rebounds a game in the past 5 games. They needed that, especially because, and we haven't really talked about it, Richardson also has been a huge loss. And I thought he was going to be the most valuable player for this team when they both fell.
He's kind of been forgotten in this whole
really
Embiid and
has.
Simmons thing. I mean, I don't think people realize how important Richardson is. And the thing
He was the best team on the Heat before they made that trade, obviously, and got Jimmy Butler.
So, like, he may not put up eye-popping numbers, or he's not going to drop 25 a game. Like, that's not who Josh Richardson is. But I think he's underappreciated.
He's definitely like a more consistent player than people call him out to be.
Yes. And then that's the word we've been saying the most on the show so far is consistency.
As what we're lacking. Yeah, right. Is consistency.
What do you guys like? You guys like Richardson? You want him to stay with the team for as long as possible?
Most definitely. I wanted him to become the number one scorer, and obviously injuries kind of prohibited that. I thought he was going to be that number one scoring option above Tobias Harris because he wasn't giving us that production that a regular max contract should give coming out of free agency. So Richardson, again, he was a walking bucket. I think he averaged over 20 points a game his last season in Miami. Obviously, it's a little watered down because there was no scorers around him. But just being able to bring that back and be a walking bucket and not have the weight of the team on his back, I thought would be able to free him up, and it should.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that anybody can help right now. And I mean, especially with, the lack of consistency, I think that he can help. And I think that after the trade deadline too, like, I think it helped with the scoring, but I think Josh Richardson is definitely, like, they're missing him right now on the court.
For sure.
Now, what I did notice, and we don't have a graphic for this, but Al Horford has actually been playing well recently. In the past couple of weeks, we've had nothing good to say about him.
Yeah.
Just real quick, even when Embiid came back last night, he still put up 20 points, grabbed about 10 boards, 6 assists. Like, he's a stat sheet filler. It's just sometimes it doesn't seem like it with the way he plays.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
No, I mean, sometimes stats can lie, obviously, but Horford's always been kind of different in that way, shape, and form, and especially with the Celtics, because the only stat that you could really look at for him, because nothing else would blow you out of the water, was just the scoring differentials of the opposing team.
Right.
And we obviously haven't seen that yet. We've had a lot of complaints with him, but now, as he obviously has to be a lot more than he ever was with the Celtics, averaging 16 points per game in March, you can't scoff at that. Like, that's pretty impressive for him.
I mean, he was definitely underperforming for the amount that we're paying him.
Yes. Yeah.
And even when Embiid was out, like, we really needed him to step up, and I don't think he did. So, I mean, I'm not like, woohoo, yay, Al Horford. Like, okay, finally. That's how I feel about it.
I think a lot of people are reacting that way, and it's just weird because I always remembered Horford, just the game that he had the last time Embiid was out in Atlanta. But we'll have to see what happens with that. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to talk some Flyers. Stay tuned.
Oh my God, I swear, these sports show hosts just get dumber and dumber as time goes on. Like, I can't believe people are actually paid money, real money, more than what I make at my job to say this stupid stuff. Like, I can't believe this crap. Oh my gosh. I'm about to lose it. I'm about to lose it. Like, this is just, how can they even...
Hey, what you doing?
This stupid sports show. These people have no idea how the game of basketball is played. Not at all.
Hey, you're not you when you don't watch LaSalle TV. Here, let me show you.
Have much more left, but the only reason why for everyone else it's a one-year rental.
Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I'm your host, all that
Feel better now?
Better.
You're not you when you're not watching LaSalle TV. To stay up to date, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
It's the small things that make a big difference.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Philly. We're here to do some Flyers talk now, and here with me to replace Gia is Jamie Smith. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. Today we're talking about the Flyers, and they are still staying hot. Their winning streak unfortunately came to an end on Tuesday night, but with good reason. The Boston Bruins, the league-leading Boston Bruins, came in to town, and I was at that game Tuesday night. Tuukka Rask put on a performance I don't think I've ever seen live. I've definitely, you see shutouts a good amount in the NHL, but what I saw Tuesday night from Tuukka Rask was just absolutely insane. And I know, like you said, it's Philly, it's sports talk, it's Philly sports talk.
Yeah.
There's Flyers, not the Bruins, but Tuukka Rask is literally the reason why our winning streak came to an end. But with that being said, there's still a lot of season left. The Flyers were playing such great hockey leading up to that point. I think there's really no such thing as a good loss, but with the way things played out Tuesday, I'd like to think things are okay.
No, you can't look too much at that loss. I mean, I joked about it earlier, but it was Tuukka Rask's 33rd birthday, so obviously that had something to do with it. I mean, but
33?
Here's the thing. Yeah, he's been doing it for a while. I could be wrong, actually. Who knows? But the reason I kind of take that loss into consideration more than anything else is because I think that the Flyers need to do exactly what they did before. You saw that they outshot the Bruins in that game. During this 9-game winning streak, they've outscored opponents 39-17, and their average time of possession is 24 and a half minutes. So that's huge, and there's no changing that because the Flyers succeed so well with that. But the Bruins are the best short-term hockey possession team. They are the best on the fly. They're great at just letting Tuukka Rask make 30 outstanding saves per game, and they just get it on the rebound. I mean, the Flyers, the shift of this game was late in that second period when the Flyers were on the power play and they were just suffocated in the opposing zone, And just 30 seconds out of that is when they got the first goal of the game, just on a transition. So that's all the Bruins need, but the Flyers need to stay with this game plan.
Yeah, I think we just needed that early lead, and I just think that going scoreless 2 periods and then having them score, or they went scoreless until like the end of the second period on that power play, and then they scored again like late in the third. I think that just kind of put us back, and that second goal, Carter Hart was just off his line on that one. You can't really blame him for this game, and I think both goals were just tough goals, and I think that we just need to get back and win the next one.
The one was off a flyer too. It was blocked, and then so you can't blame Hart for that. He's been the most valuable player these past 4 games.
And the rest of the game for him was very consistent. It was just those 2 goals were just like little slip-ups.
Yeah, and like I said, like the way that everything played out, the situation is like if I don't know, if New Jersey came into Wells Fargo, which they did already, and they beat us already. If it was a team like that, then I would start to ask some questions.
Yeah.
But that was Boston. And
team.
the beauty thing about this is that the Flyers just seem to I don't know how much better they can get because they're getting to the net with ease. So it's just the way that the offense has been playing. They're so much more smoother, and they can get into the opposing zone fast. It's just a matter of converting. Do you think that can't be an issue for them going?
It's such a deep chemistry. Like, there's nothing you could do besides that. Obviously, as many people know, there's not a lot of drawn-up plays in hockey like there is in basketball. So once you realize that, that's just nothing besides knowing where your teammate's going to be. I mean, you got to credit the one, his name's slipping my mind, but the skate save behind the back. Like, there's nothing you can credit that to besides chemistry. So just being able to circulate the puck, they've changed. Ever since that Hart injury, they've changed how long they keep the puck in their zone. They pass up good shots for great shots and just circulate around. And they're not worried about turnovers getting beat down the ice because they're also one of the best conditioned teams in hockey.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of our problems stem from our defense breaking down, because I think that Flyers have always usually had a strong offense, but I feel like now our defense has gotten more together with each other and learned how each other, because we've gotten a lot of new players and a lot of new defenders on the team, and I think now they're starting to figure out how they work together. And I think now the team as a whole unit, it's not just oh, we have a good offense and a bad defense. I think now it's the teams working together as a whole unit and finally figuring out how we play as a team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as I alluded to during Sixers talk, the injury bug always finds its way to Philly sports teams, and it's kind of starting to pile up right now. We talked about last week JVR having to essentially miss the rest of the season with a broken hand, but Nate Thompson, who we acquired before the NHL trade deadline, we're not going to see him for a couple weeks with a knee issue. Phil Myers just went down, another not star, but a potentially talented defenseman. Do you think the injuries that are racking up right now are significant enough, or is it just a matter of, it's obviously next man up no matter what happens, but do you think the next man up is still worthy enough to keep this hot play going for the Flyers?
I do. I mean, I questioned it a couple weeks ago that Farabee, I didn't understand why he got sent down. Obviously, just more ice time and the veterans that came to him. I'm pretty sure Thompson was one of the people that actually sent him back down to AHL. But bringing Farabee back, I mean, he had a very great game against the Bruins, obviously. 1 goal in 3 games, obviously. So he's really been able to put himself in the stat sheet a little bit. But just playoff depth in your lineup, having 1 through 4 lines just deep enough to actually get some consistency out is unmatched. So we'll have to see who comes back whenever the season resumes, obviously. But I think it's huge just to have everyone that knows the system.
Yeah, and I think these injuries it is a setback, but I mean, having JVR out definitely was a little bit of a heartbreak for me. But again, I think Farabee, part of me was now we're bringing Farabee back up because I didn't want him to get sent back down, and I'm happy that he's back. And also on top of that, I think that every man that we brought up from the Phantoms has delivered for us. So I feel like if we did need to bring more, like Morgan Frost, for example, I think did a great job when we brought him up. And I just think that I think we have a solid backup for the guys that are we don't want more injuries for the team, but I think that our backups are pretty solid for the Flyers right now.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to assume that the Flyers farm system is pretty talented and well suited to have guys be sent up. And it's hard to adapt to the NHL right when you get there, but if these guys are playing well or really showing out in the AHL, maybe it's a good thing for them.
Yeah.
But looking at the standings, it's still pretty jam-packed in the East, especially in the Metro. We're keeping up with Washington. They actually suffered an OT loss on Tuesday, which bumped them up a point. Do we still feel confident that we'll be on top at the end of the season?
I definitely do. And one of the main reasons I feel that way, it was kind of like an obscure stat that I found out the other day, but Carter Hart in home games only has 3 regular season losses. And in a Metro that is so tight like this, you need that extra point for overtime. And just the fact that you could trust your main goalie now, and Elliott's had a phenomenal season as well. We talked about them this entire season. But the fact of the matter being that you could trust your guys just to, if you don't have it that night, at least send it to overtime and then take the loss, or who knows what'll happen, and just to be able to fight throughout the entire game really gives me confidence that, A, they'll be good to get one of the top spots in the Metropolitan and stay there, even though, as I say every week, you're one bad week away from being 3rd or 4th in that league. Or at the same time, you also have that professionalism going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and we were tied for first at that one point, but then again, the Capitals did get that extra point in that OT loss. But I just think that we had that 9-game winning streak, and then we lost to our biggest competitor. So I think that if we can just gain that streak back up again, we'll be back on top. No problem with that.
Yeah, and I mean, the beauty part is that just the entire Flyers foundation, the way that they're built from top to bottom, you feel good about it. Now, of course, with everything going on, the season may be suspended, or we don't know when they're going to pick back up again. But
yeah.
We'll see.
Do you think they still come out with the same fire and intensity and just really the same level of play?
I think they do, and the one reason is just because they're playing so hard and so consistently for nothing besides Oscar. I think that is their main and central focus. I think that is such a great rallying segment. Who knows what they'll use for. So I think that even though having this little hiatus, it's tough to come back and play your best hockey, even though you'll be a lot less banged up. Who knows what will happen, and hopefully the team stays healthy.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe this break will be good for them. I mean, I'm glad you brought up Oscar, because I think that is definitely a big morale booster for them. Is they have him behind them, supporting them, and I think that's just great for the Flyers.
Yeah, definitely thinking of him all the time, as usual. So let's move on to Fast Five, and Tyler, we're going to come with you with a baseball question. JT Realmuto and the arbitration situation. Things seemed okay, but now things might not be so okay. Well, what are your thoughts on just that situation and arbitration in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole arbitration system is broken. It really is. It takes 6 years, obviously. For anyone that doesn't know, for 6 years, you basically can't get paid if you were coming out of the farm system. So it's great for players that come up at 22, 23 years old, like Ronald Acuna and guys like that. But if you are any later than that, you're never going to get the payday you deserve. So JT Realmuto thought he got the benefit of the doubt for he got the higher paycheck, obviously, but having a courtroom just tell you how terrible you are, having your own organization, the one signing those paychecks, telling you how terrible you are, who knows?
Jamie, who do you fear the most in the Eastern Conference for the Flyers when they get to the playoffs?
I mean, I would probably say the Capitals for this one just because they are on top of us right now. But, I mean, I just don't think in our conference right now we have a whole lot to fear. But I think, if anything, the Capitals are definitely our biggest matchup just because they are ahead of us in points and we have lost to them in the past. But it's definitely a team that I've learned this season that we can take on.
Yeah, definitely interesting because of how much we've struggled against Tampa Bay and the Islanders. And then you look at the Caps, we've taken 7 out of 8 points. But, you know, you alluded to the loss against them in 2016 or 2018 when they went and won it all. So it's just very tough.
Yeah.
Tyler, who do you think will be the first wide receiver taken in this year's draft?
CeeDee Lamb. He had one of the top 40 yards, and his measurements were great. I think he's going to be phenomenal if he falls to the Eagles.
Jamie, Travis Konechny leads the Flyers in goals with 24. Do you think that's going to hold till the end?
I would say yes, but I think, not far behind is Kevin Hayes with 23. Okay. So those two players, I think, are very equal when it comes to, like, they're scoring almost every game. And I think that Kevin Hayes might be on top, but we'll see. Yeah,
very exciting to see what happens with that. Tyler, last but not least, without conference tournaments happening, who do you think will be the 4-1 seeds in the
I think it stays kind of basic. I give Kansas, Gonzaga, Baylor, and Dayton the top 4. I think Dayton, of all 4 of them, goes the farthest, though.
Really?
I think Gonzaga loses the round of 32. Dayton is a Final Four team. Get ready for that.
Well, that's pretty bold. Let's hope we get to see that happen. This was the most exciting year in college basketball, but it may all be for naught. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of Sports Talk Philly here on LaSalle TV. Make sure you catch us on social media. Find us on Twitter at SportsTalkLTV. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/SportsTalkPhiladelphia. Also find us on YouTube where you can check out other LaSalle TV shows as well. We hope to see you guys again soon. Enjoy your weekend,